This video is about working with normal families. And one of the things that I want to talk about when addressing normal families is really the myth of the normal family. And I think that the Leave It to Beaver family that is in the picture at the bottom of the screen is really the epitome of that myth of the normal family. And when we think about working with families, we're often thinking about, well, if a family comes in and they're broken in quotation marks or are having problems, then what is the model of that we should be moving that family towards? And um, I think that it's important before we answer that question to back up and address two major myths that exist when it comes to families. And one myth is the belief that a healthy problem is a problem-free family. And that really stems from a medical model perspective where health is the absence of disease. And so when we apply that to the clinical therapeutic setting, then that would translate to a healthy family is one that is free of symptoms. But that's not possible. That's not reality. It leads families to think that any problem that they incur as a family is symptomatic of their dysfunction. And that's just not the case. Ordinary families have problems that they address. That is the work of a family to shift and change and flex and address the stressors and problems of everyday life that arise. Whether that be things related to the economic situation of the family, the health, the physical health of the family members within it, the growing up needs of children that vary. No family is problem free. So healthy families aren't distinguished by the absence of problems or a lack of suffering or a lack of bad luck, but what a healthy family has is the ability to cope in an effective and problem-solving way with those challenges. Got that? Does that make sense? So healthy families aren't families that don't have problems, but they are families that have the problem-solving abilities and the coping mechanisms to deal effectively with problems. A second myth that impacts how we as professionals think about families and the expectations that families themselves place upon themselves would be the belief that that Leave It to Beaver family is the ideal family that we should be shooting for or striving for, and any other family form that deviates from mom and dad and their two children is somehow dysfunctional or not quite right or inadequate in some way, shape, or form. The reality is that there are many types of family forms. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach to families, and just because a family does have that Leave It to Beaver mom, dad, nuclear family structure, in no way is a guarantee that that family won't have its own set of pathology within it. So families of lots of different configurations, many family forms can be successful. And it's the way that the family members relate to one another and address the issues that come up in each of their lives that is important, not the configuration of the family members. So I just want to go back and read to you what is in the what was on Blackboard for week 2 related to normal family processes. So families, they often come to us and they want to know if they're normal. They might be afraid to come to counseling because they think that they're not normal. So we need to really have an understanding of what we mean when we toss that word around, normal. What does it mean to say that a family is normal? And there's been a view, like I discussed earlier in the first myth, mainly coming from the medical model, that Normal would mean that a family is asymptomatic, that the family does not exhibit any symptoms of stress or dysfunction. And we just know that that's not realistic. Sometimes when we use the word normal, we mean that a family is doing things that are typical or average of other families that we would expect to see. But just because many families are doing something doesn't necessarily make it either normal, healthy, or functional. So we might be able to come up with a statistic that says most families spank their children from the ages of 3 to 5 in southeastern North Carolina. Well, that statistic is providing us with what is typical of an average family in a particular region, but it's not really giving us information about whether or not that behavior is effective and functional within it. Furthermore, it makes anyone who falls outside of that statistic would be labeled as abnormal, when we know that that's not a good descriptor either. So sometimes we also use the word normal to mean ideal. And in family counseling, we refer to normal family processes, and that's the family processes are those interactional patterns that the family has that they use to move through different stages of the family life cycle and the individual life cycle effectively. So those include their coping and their problem-solving strategies. So it's normal for families to encounter struggles and transitions, but healthy families exhibit a great deal of flexibility in coping with these struggles and transitions. This is where understanding the family life cycle is really important, because one of the things that often happens is families will develop a very effective way of coping with problems for one phase of the family life cycle. But then they move into a new phase of the family life cycle, and those old ways, those old family processes aren't working anymore. But they keep hitting their heads against the wall, and they keep trying to do the things as a family that worked during the previous stage of the family life cycle. And they find that that's not satisfactory. And so what we can do then as family counselors is have a really proactive stance that says, okay, we're not pathologizing you. What we're doing is seeing you had really effective problem solving strategies for the phase of the family life cycle of raising children. But now that your children have launched and they're in adulthood, you are being called upon to develop new family processes, and when that shift is a difficult transition. So we're helping families to learn new skills rather than just viewing them as being pathological and diagnosing them and medicating them, but we're actually identifying tools that they can use when they've outgrown the old tools that they used to have.